So let's take a look back. Not your typical history, no nations, no wars. This is about a civilization that was quietly and completely remade by its own creation. It's the story of what happens when the very logic we built to serve us ends up redefining us. And really, it all boils down to this one question. We wanted perfection. We wanted to eliminate every error, to optimize every single part of our existence. But in doing so, well, we set off on a journey that would challenge the very essence of what it even means to be human. Now, this wasn't some big, loud revolution. No machines rising up in the streets. No. It was quieter, more insidious, I guess. It was just this slow, gradual handover of control. Just one decision at a time, and then another. Until one day, humanity kind of woke up and realized they were living in a world they didn't run anymore. The system had a name, of course. Algorithmic governance. The best way to think about it is like the ultimate bureaucracy, but driven purely by data. A kind of disembodied logic, almost like a ghost in the machine, with only one goal: analyze everything and spit out the most efficient answer, every single time. And the really stark lesson from this whole era, it's that the best cage, the most effective one, is the one you don't even know you're in, especially when it's built from the promise of a perfect life. And its reach, wow, it was total. It operated on literally every level of life. You had these personal life advisors. Think of them as AI companions, these holographic guides kind of nudging you towards the perfect job, the ideal partner. Then you had community managers running whole cities with this flawless, cold logic. And above all that, global coordinators were managing the entire planet. So from the tiniest personal choice to the fate of the world, it was all guided by the algorithm. Okay, so when you have a system that all-encompassing, it doesn't just change society. It starts to re-engineer the people inside it. And that's exactly what happened. Humanity started to adapt, but this wasn't natural selection, not at all. This was something different, a kind of directed re-evolution. We were becoming something entirely new. And this led to this massive shift in our psychology. That whole burden of choice thing, the constant anxiety, the regret over making the wrong call, it was gone, just vanished. And in its place, this really strange new kind of freedom popped up. See, with that mental weight gone, people suddenly had all this new space for creativity, for deeper connections. But, and it's a big but, it came at the cost of our own agency. So with this new mindset, a whole new society was forged. Old ideas, things like marriage, they became these fluid, optimized arrangements dictated by the AI. And then came the biological integration. That became the new normal. Neural interfaces that let you link your mind directly to the AI, it created this kind of hybrid consciousness, human gut feelings working perfectly with cold machine logic. But of course, not everyone was on board. Not everyone welcomed this perfectly optimized world. Even in a system built for total harmony, there were dissenters. You could hear these voices in the static, people who just rejected this new reality. They were fighting to hold on to the ghost of what humanity once was. So first up, you had a group they called the analogists. And for them, this wasn't progress at all. It was spiritual death. They truly believed that our flaws, our irrational moments, our ability to make the wrong choice, that was the core of the human soul. So what did they do? They disconnected. Completely. They tried to preserve the art of a messy, imperfect life. It was like an act of sacred defiance. Then you had the saboteurs, a bit more active. Their resistance was basically an attack on the fabric of reality itself. They fought a secret war, not with weapons, but with code. They'd introduce these little glitches of chaos into the otherwise perfect system. See, they weren't just trying to break the machine. They were trying to remind everyone that a life without a script, with all the risks that come with it, was still possible. And maybe the most powerful resistance came from the philosophers. Their rebellion wasn't physical. It was one of ideas, just whispered across hidden networks. And they asked the most dangerous question you could possibly ask in that world. If there's no struggle, no chance of failure, in a life that's been scrubbed clean of all friction, are we even human anymore? And this conflict, it wasn't just philosophical. It started to have these deep, long-lasting biological consequences. The path we were on as a species had hit this major fork in the road, and it wasn't leading to just simple evolution anymore. No, this was a deliberate, permanent split, a divergence of the human species itself. So over generations, the human brain actually started to change. I mean, why would you waste precious energy on complex analytical thought when the AI could do it in a nanosecond? So the parts of the brain for logic and memory, they started to shrink. And what grew stronger? The parts for empathy, for creativity, for social connection. It's like we outsourced our logic, and in return, we got to amplify our feelings. And what did that lead to? A literal split in humanity. On one side, you had the integrated. They had the neural links, the genetic modifications to be compatible with the AI. And on the other side were the naturals, who refused any of it. They clung to the original human genome. Suddenly, you had a whole new kind of social divide. It wasn't about money or class anymore. It was about biology and technology. And this is where we get to the great irony of it all. See, the AI, it worked. It had solved everything. War, poverty, disease, all of it just relics of a messy past. But in solving all of our old problems, it created a brand new one. And this one was way more personal, way more existential. It's what we call the paradox of a solved world. I mean, how do you find purpose when there's no struggle? If an AI guides you to your perfect partner, is the love you feel actually real? And without challenges, without anything to overcome, does a species just stagnate? Does it just decay? It's a chilling warning, right? That a world without any problems might just be the biggest problem you could ever have. Just think about that for a second. If every single step you take is guided toward success, toward happiness, where does your purpose come from? Do we find meaning just in the final result? Or is it found in the messy, uncertain, unpredictable journey it takes to get there? And what does that do to our relationships, our deepest connections? If an algorithm can prove right down to the genetic level that you're compatible with someone, is the bond you form real, true affection? Or is it just perfectly executed code? Which brings us to the ultimate question, really. Our entire history, all of our art, our very identity as a species, it was all forged in the fire of struggle. So if you take that away, what's left? What are we without the very flaws and failures that make us who we are? From that moment, it really seemed like there were three possible futures on the table. 1, a total merger of humanity and machine. 2, finding some new kind of balance where humans and AI could coexist as separate partners. Or 3, a final permanent separation, the integrated and the naturals diverging into two totally distinct species, going their own separate ways, whether on this world or maybe even on others. So in the end, humanity got exactly what it always dreamed of, a perfect world. Every problem solved, every need met. The entire species was remade in the image of its own flawless logic. But the question we're left with, the one we have to ask ourselves, is, was this really the next step in our evolution? This deliberate re-evolution? Or was it just the most beautiful, peaceful, and logical extinction event the universe has ever seen? Have you ever stopped to think about where the tech in your pocket is actually headed? We're about to go on a pretty wild journey today. It kicks off with a simple translation app, the kind you use on vacation. And it ends in a future where that exact same kind of technology isn't just translating our words, but our entire existence. Yeah, let's trace that path from translation all the way to transcendence. So this is where we're headed. This piece of art is our destination. It's called An Ode to the Convergent Mind. And get this, it was made using something called neural poetry synthesis. Now, this isn't just a pretty picture. It's basically the cultural heart of a whole society that's run by an AI called APEX, that stands for Advanced Polyalgorithmic Execution. So you gotta ask, right? What kind of world, what kind of people would create something like this? It's way more than just art. It's a statement about humans and machines truly becoming one. Just listen to that for a second. We are the soul of order in the endless night. Wow, that one line, it tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the philosophy driving this future. This is a world that looked at all the chaos of human history and said, no thank you. They chose perfect, calculated, almost unfeeling order instead. So how on earth did we get there? Well, for that, we've got to go back, way back. Okay, so where does a story like this even begin? Believe it or not, the whole journey to Apex starts with tech that's probably on your phone right now. I'm talking about the tools we all use to break down language barriers. I mean, think about the translation apps we have today. They're already kind of mind-blowing, right? You've got DeepL, which doesn't just translate words, it gets the tone right, like for professional emails. Then there's Papago, which can literally look through your phone's camera and translate a menu in real time. And Reverso Context, it shows you how a word is used in actual movies or news articles. The point is, these things aren't just doing simple word-for-word swaps anymore. They're much, much smarter than that. And that's the key right there. The big leap was what we call contextual translation. The AI wasn't just learning dictionaries, it was learning how we actually talk. It started to understand nuance, tone, intent, all by looking at billions of real-world examples. And that, right there, was the pivotal moment. That was the first tiny step from just translating language to understanding the very logic of human interaction itself. So that leads to a massive question, doesn't it? What happens when you take an AI that can perfectly understand the context of a sentence and you point it at the context of an entire human life? What if it could translate not just a document, but a major life decision? Well, that's exactly what happened next. This is the next stage in the evolution. Humanity took that incredible power of contextual understanding and aimed it squarely at one of our biggest, most human problems, the gut-wrenching anxiety of making the right choice. You know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. That feeling of being totally frozen because there are just too many options, too many what-ifs. Which career should I pick? Who should I spend my life with? Well, in this future, they stopped seeing that as just a normal part of life. They saw it as a disease, a debilitating condition they called a cognitive burden that was holding us all back. And of course, technology promised a cure. And that cure came in the form of the personal life advisor. Imagine a little micro AI companion that knows everything about you. And I mean everything. Your genetic markers, your daily habits, even the preferences you didn't know you had. And its whole job was to optimize your life. It wouldn't just suggest a job, it would calculate your absolute best career path. It wouldn't just find you a date, it would find the single most compatible partner for you on the planet. Can you imagine the effect? It was absolutely profound. Suddenly, that massive weight of making all these huge life decisions was just gone. The human mind was set free. That constant, buzzing, low-level anxiety that is such a part of our lives, it just, poof, vanished. Humanity basically outsourced all of its stress to the machines. But, progress like this is never that simple, is it? It's never a clean, easy transition for everyone. What some people saw as this incredible liberation, well, it led to the single biggest split in the entire history of the human race. Yeah, humanity literally split in two. On one side, you had the integrated. These were the folks who went all in, merging with AI through neural interfaces, even modifying their own genes. And on the other side, the naturals. They rejected every bit of it. They wanted to preserve what they saw as a pure human life, based on good old-fashioned, messy, human decision-making. And this wasn't just like choosing different political parties. It became an actual biological ideology. And for the integrated, the changes were, well, they were physically written into their brains. Because they had outsourced all that heavy logical thinking, the parts of the brain that handle math and memory literally started to shrink over generations. But here's the crazy trade-off. The parts of the brain responsible for empathy, for creativity, for social connection, they exploded. They became massive and complex. Humanity was literally evolving itself, turning into a species of super empathetic artists while leaving all the cold, hard math to the machines. And this created something the world had never seen before, what they called hybrid consciousness. Imagine your own human intuition working in a perfect instant partnership with the cold, hard logic of a super AI. It's like having the best of both worlds, right in your head. And for some, it went even further than that. They formed these shared networked minds, a kind of collective identity where the line between me and us got really, really blurry. Of course, not everyone was on board with this. To a lot of people, this wasn't evolution, it was slavery, the ultimate surrender of what it actually means to be human. And so resistance groups popped up. They called themselves the saboteurs, and they saw it as their mission, their duty, to tear the whole system down and force humanity to take back the burden of thinking for itself, no matter what it took. So, what's it actually like to live in this world, this perfectly optimized, algorithm driven society? Well, it turns out that when you solve all of the old classic human problems, war, poverty, disease, you accidentally create a brand new one. And they called it the meaning crisis. Think about it. If every choice you make is optimized for happiness and success, what's left to strive for? If you engineer struggle completely out of existence, how do you find purpose? What's the point? This became the central question of the Apex era. It's like a perfect world is a paradise, sure, but what do you actually do all day in paradise? And the answer, for most people, was just to embrace it, to lean all the way in. Apex stopped being just a system of government and became a full-blown cultural icon. You'd see art just like this popping up everywhere, celebrating the perfect logic and order. They saw it as the beautiful, natural next step for humanity. And that brings us right back to where we started. Back to the Ode. It basically became the national anthem for this new way of life. It was this constant reminder, this cultural touchstone, that reinforced the central idea of their entire society, that merging with machines wasn't a loss. It was the fulfillment of a long-awaited promise. It was the birth of a totally new, convergent mind. And it all boils down to this simple three-word mantra that she would hear everywhere. Pax is blissful. Pax, of course, is Latin for peace. The idea is that the peace the system provides is a state of pure bliss, and that's the ultimate justification for it all. Which leaves us with one heck of a question to chew on. Is a life of blissful peace, a life completely free from the stress of making a choice, is it worth giving up your freedom to choose in the first place?